sort of like a highly classified black program. You don't want the Russians or the Chinese to know what we're doing.
If I were to tell you that the United States had spent over 2 decades training psychics to fight against the Soviet Union, would you believe me? What if I had told you that it worked? Well, may have. The Cold War was an intense time period, both powerhouse nations being ready for nuclear devastation. So, once the United States discovered that Russia had funded approximately 60 million rubles into studying psychic powers, the race had once again begun. In 1970, the United States created a project initiated under the program SCAN-8, standing for Scan by Coordinate. And within 2 years, they began studying the concept known as remote viewing. Remote viewing is the practice, if not ability, to sense a distant, unseen target entirely with the mind. It's a controversial practice as it has been historically mocked for its lack in evidence and pseudoscience. But these were desperate times, and desperate times calls for desperate measures. The project was doomed for failure. The psychic research that was provided to the United States was massively lacking in detail, being made up of mostly third-party rumors and second-hand experiences. It would later be discovered that this was a disinformation ploy created by the Soviet Union. Not only were the programs lacking actual scientific proof, but furthermore, the scientists refused to tell the psychics if they were incorrect about their abilities, as they were afraid that the rejection would hinder their confidence, a supposed key element to being a psychic. If the psychic was correct or incorrect about their abilities, the answers were always kept classified from both the public and the viewer themselves. Two men would lead the studies throughout the years: physicist Russell Targ and physicist Harold Puthoff. The two men were given many strict rules, with the key rule being that a minimum accuracy rate of 65% was required by every client. The physicists would later go on to state that their clients often vastly exceeded the given expectations. Their early success with the client Uri Geller is what garnered the United States' interest in continuing to fund these programs. Thus, the government sent over Ray Hyman to evaluate Uri Geller's talents and the men's research behind remote viewing. Ray would report back to the United States government, stating that Uri Geller was nothing more than a fraud. But in 1977, the United States would revive the program under the name of Gondola Wish, allowing them to, once again, research and evaluate applications for remote viewing cases. The research that was gathered during this time was then integrated to begin a new program, Operation Grillflame. But this was later renamed in 1983 to INSCOM Center Lane Project, or ICLP for short. Due to the seemingly constant updates and lack of proof, the funding for ICLP was terminated in 1985, but would once again be revived and renamed as Project Sunstreak, to which it received its funding from the DIA's Scientific and Technical Intelligence Office. Information that was gained during this time was then changed from Special Access Program to Limited Dissemination. Previously, only certain select files were labeled as top secret. Now, the entire operation had been upgraded to top secret. Once upgraded to maximum security, the project would take on its final name. But, of course, as we've seen over and over again, the files collected underneath the DIA had been transferred over to the CIA, who had then commissioned a report from the American Institute for Research to identify if Stargate held any worth to its purpose. The report claimed it did not. The information gained from the previous 2 decades had failed to provide any actionable information for any intelligence operation. Thus, the Stargate project would be terminated in 1995. While it's easy to chalk this up to being a unique perspective into the anxieties of the Cold War, we must not brush it off so easily. Gondola Wish, Girl Flame, Sunstreak, Stargate, whatever you want to call it. Something about it clearly gained enough attention for it to be sporadically funded for over 2 decades. For something nicknamed a quote-unquote giggle project, there was something about it that had multiple research institutes and government facilities constantly looking back into it. Unfortunately, every bit of information as of 1991 has been classified, marked, or destroyed before the CIA declassified the remaining knowledge in 1995. Did the psychics ever prove their capabilities? Were there actual secret wars being fought beyond the physical realm? It's safe to say that we may never know. Remember in the beginning of the video, I had stated that the Gondola Wish project may have actually worked. Well, what if I had told you that there was a specific reason behind why the US government started funding the project in 1977? This very reason is told through the eyes of Dale Graff. I wanted to work on ESP research as a scientist. So, I reached out to Puthoff at the Stanford Research Institute. After a submersible experiment, I received the go-ahead to proceed onto a small Air Force program. The real work had just begun. Quietly, I began locating people at our facility who seemed interested in ESP. It was a classified effort. I was looking for remote viewers. Finally, I was put in touch with a young administrative assistant named Rosemary Smith. She was interested.
I think I have this kind of ability,
she said. I gave her the standard protocol tests that Stanford were running on their... They were nice results. Several months had passed when I realized I could put this to further use. Or put her to further use. See, the Air Force had issues with spending extensive amounts of time on locating fallen planes and missing aircraft. I had just written up a proposal about how our division could assist them using extrasensory perception, when quite literally, I heard a knock on my door. I was taken into an office and was shown a photograph. I was told quite simply, "This is a missing aircraft. Can one of your people help find it?" I was told nothing about the location of the downed airplane, but figured it must have been somewhere in Europe, with it being a Soviet bomber plane. I took it to Rosemary, who was cleared on the matter, and we began. I asked her if she could receive or achieve any impressions, and after 15 minutes or so, she had begun sketching out a map. She had drawn little compass indicators for north and south, and then noted a town and some geological formations. And that was that. She told me that the aircraft had fallen in mountainous terrain, not far from a lake. I asked her if she could be any more specific, and she became hyper-focused and began sketching more. She drew a flight path and marked on the map where the plane landed, and wrote,
"Plane possibly flew through a pass or opening in the mountains. I just saw a pilot bailing out of the aircraft,"
she told me. I didn't think that mattered, but I noted it anyway. Turns out, that was a key detail. I gave the information and the crude map to the search team, and not even a day later, I was told that the plane was flown by a Libyan pilot who had decided to defect and abandon the plane. It flew on autopilot until it crashed somewhere in the thick forest. The pilot then contacted the United States, and they realized that foreign intel had quite literally just fallen onto their laps. They just needed a way to find the specific coordinations. And that's where Rosemary Smith comes in once again. They cleared her once again, and this time getting clearance from the CIA. They discovered her drawn map matched topographically similar to the map that was laid out, and she then pinpointed a spot on the map. Her coordinations were sent to the CIA station chief in Africa, and less than 3 days later, we found it. We found the airplane. And thus, it was confirmed. Rosemary Smith had located a defected Soviet bomber plane with her mind.